Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to be looking at a couple of Python tricks and tips. Now, there are a lot of Python tricks and they help improve coding a lot. But today I'm going to be focusing on just the ones that are really necessary to your coding career and help you overall in programming Python. So, the first thing I'm going to show you is data classes. So, if you want to store data in a class format, you usually use a normal class and define an init function that takes value at creation. Now, this is a lot of hassle, especially if you just want to store data. So, Python has a built-in library called data classes, and if you just type in this from data classes import data class, we can access the add data class decorator. And what this data class allows you to do is you can easily define attributes and set data types to those attributes extremely easily. So here I've created two classes, one using the data class decorator and one using the normal method. And you can see they're both essentially the same thing, except the data class has a bunch of default methods that allow easier management of these classes. For example, if I define two classes and one is a data class and I set the topic to be points, so I'm going to record a x value and a y value for those points. And I did the same thing with a normal class, and I defined two points p1 and p2. Now the first one is using this data class, and the second one is using the normal class. So if I print both of these, we can see that when you're printing a data class, you get this nice representation of what this actually is. So we get all the attributes, and we get what class this is actually is. However, if we print this p2, which is using a normal class, we get this memory address. Now this is not very useful, especially if you want to debug. So we usually have to write a representation function. Now speaking of representation function, our next topic is going to be that. So if you want to debug various classes and objects, we can use the underscore repr function. This is a default function that allows you to set a value, and that value will show whenever you print that object. So here I made a class foo, which is just a random name, and then there's an attribute bar, which is just corresponds to a string of x, y, z. And so I defined a representation function, and when you use it, it it returns this expression. So I use this to make a new class, object, and I printed it, and we can see the representation of this in a printed form. This is extremely useful if you want to debug and see what an object actually is. Next, using the globals function. Now, we know how to define a variable in Python normally. However, if you want to dynamically define variables using a list of variable names and values, well, then you have to use globals. So here we have a bunch of keys, which are the variable names, and values, which are the corresponding values. So what I did is I made a for loop, which takes the corresponding tuples pairs of 1 and A, 2 and B, 3 and C, and so on, and set a variable for A to be 1, B to be 2, C to be 3. The way I did this is using this zip function. I guess you can consider this a subtip, but a zip function allows you to pair two lists together in corresponding tuples. And so we can use this to simultaneously loop through multiple lists. So as you can see, when I print A, B, and C, we get 1, 2, and 3. So if you ever want to define a variable based on input from a user, you can use this globals function. Okay. Next. This is one that you have to get used to a lot. So whenever you see a lot of Python scripts, they usually have this. They have a main function, and then they have this if name equals main. What this allows you to do is run the script only if it's executed as a script and not a module. So for example, uh, you want to create a Python script that allows you to print hello world. Now, if someone imports this as a module to use, say, this main function, if you don't use this, the moment they import the module, this hello world will be printed. And this is just hello world. Sometimes you have a big function that returns a value as a big number. And this takes up a lot of computing thing. We won't even want to do this when we import a module. So that's why we use this name equals main function. So it only does this if this script is being run directly. Okay, so the next step is to use lambdas. Now lambdas are just mini functions. So here I can show you an example. I created A as a lambda function which returns which takes the input B and returns B times 2. So it doubles whatever number you give it. So if you give it 2, it gives you 4 and so on. Now, if you want to do this as in using a normal defined function, you need to write all this. So already you can see how this is saving code space and readability. Next, another example is if you want to use this as an input to another function. Now what I mean by this is I have this function defined as operate. And what this does is it takes a list and for each item in the list, it executes a specific operation. Now this operation is not defined within the function itself. In fact, the user has to define what this is. So you could build a custom parser that allows you to take a string and based on that you can execute a function, but that will take a lot of space. Instead, what you can do is ask the user to input a lambda. So this func is a lambda, and now you can use this here, and this will allow you to use a function as an input. Okay, another thing is to create dynamic attributes. So, for example, you have a class book, and this stores the title, author, and the ISBN number. So, if you want to have a description of this book, then you can just say that, for example, title by author with ISBN number corresponding. Now, you can use a static variable to define this. Now, this is good if you just want to create this variable and attributes and then never think about it again. Or essentially, if you want to create immutable data, this is useful. However, if you want data that's dynamically changing, say maybe the title changes, or maybe we've inputted a wrong ISBN number, then we have to change this variable all over again. So what I've done instead is create a lambda, which prints it based on the values themselves. So if they change, this changes along with it. So it's title by author and ISBN number. And so I created a new variable which corresponds to this book class. And I've given it the name, author, and ISBN number. And as soon as I get the description, it will give the description of this book. Now we can do the same thing with using a class method, but this is much more time saving and code saving. So you could do the trouble to just use self and all. You can use all these methods. However, you can also just use a lambda function to do everything dynamically. Okay. Another use for the lambdas is using it as an input to the filter function. Now the filter function can filter numbers based on a condition. So here I've set the condition to be lesser than 7. So I have this bunch of random numbers and this function should only return the random numbers which are less than 7. So if you want to do this the normal way, you have to define a whole function and then we have to use the filter function, input this and then the list. Then I'm printing this. However, since we're storing this function, and this is only for one-time use, this wastes a lot of memory. So we can just use the direct lambda function to define it within the function itself. And since we're not storing this anywhere, this saves a lot of memory. So yeah, that's it for today's video. So see you again next time. In the meanwhile, please subscribe to my channel and like this video. Bye.